Bene, grazie.
Grazie. Oh man, this movie.
Biblioteca.
Biblioteca. Prego.
Bravo.
Bravo. Ciao,
Bravo.
bella. And more words in Italian.
Hi guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today as we break down all of our favorite Italian words.
Yeah, this is the Italian Words podcast with Drew and Alex. Welcome to the show. Actually, no, we're talking
all of Fellini's works, including
starting with 8.5 and going to another one of Fellini's works, and eventually getting to the musical 9.
Exactly. Yeah, that's everyone's favorite musical, right?
When I think of Daniel Day-Lewis and I think of Fellini-based musicals that have to do with Sophia Loren, I think 9. Yeah.
Okay, it's not mozzarella, it's just mozz. Okay, it's just
Mazza. Okay, well anyway, let's play the theme song and then talk about the movie. But yeah, like theme song first. Okay. Boop. Dancing. You love dancing in place, slow motions.
What is a Cinema Bias episode without dancing? Drew, do you know the answer to that?
It's just called like a boring little podcast. You might as well listen to it on your freaking car ride commute.
The answer is it's not Cinema Bias. That's what it is. Guys, what we're going to be covering tonight is actually one of my favorite war movies, a war movie that's anti-war, a movie that's not about Americans. It is a great movie called Paths of Glory, directed by Stanley Kubrick, released in 1957.
So interested in it.
This is a weird one. I'm happy to chat it up with you, and let's just kind of break it down. What we're going to be doing here tonight is talking about our movie biases. Also, both of us have a big bias against war movies in particular, or military movies in general. Is that right, Drew?
Yeah, I don't like loud noises. Basically it. So it's not like I'm like pro or anti-war, although obviously I am anti-war. It'd be weird if I was like, but I'm pro-war, but anti-war films because they're too loud. No, like I'm anti-war, but I'm also like anti-war films because they are usually very loud and very anonymous. Like I feel like it's usually just like a bunch of people getting blown up, and like it's just really intense to watch, and you just like you're losing people left and right, and you're like, well, who even was that guy? And it turns out that guy was Tom Sizemore, like 100% of the time. But yeah, that's a callback. But this one, it was a really interesting watch. I am also like not a huge, don't kill me guys, I'm not the hugest Kubrick fan. I like some of his works, and I have never been able to sit through the entirety of Dr. Strangelove. So that's a little something about me.
Well, to be completely honest, neither have I. I watched like 15 minutes of it, and then I was like, I'm bored. I'm gonna leave.
I was like, I get it. No, it's not that I don't get the jokes. It's just that they're not my type of humor. Now, this movie, I feel like, was like a nice halfway, like down the middle part, where it's like it had some of the irony, the sort of catch-22, like the novel, not just the idea of a catch-22. It had this sort of arch, sort of wry commentary about war that Dr. Strangelove had, but it didn't do it in such like a slapsticky fashion. This movie was also my introduction to Kirk Douglas. Who knew? Who knew Michael Douglas had a dad? Most people knew that.
That's gonna be a conversation we're gonna save for another day, because we need to dive into that and much more.
Yeah, we do. Real quick, guys, I know that you don't see a alert thing or like a little donation thing, but believe me, that's only because I'm working off of a computer, like an ad hoc situation right now, upstate. Yeah, that's right, upstate California. I'll say whatever I want. But we do still have the lines open, so please feel free to donate. Streamlabs.com/VideoDrew. Send in super chats. The little bot will read it out loud, and I will just say the donation amount at the end.
We would greatly appreciate it and help keep the lights on here at Cinema Bias. Much appreciated. Now, before we kind of dive into our one of our first segments of the evening, which is tell me the plot. Specifically, I want to know about your bias for or against this movie in particular. I know you said watching more movies in general and is a very new experience for you, but also Stanley Kubrick is not something you're used to all that much. Did you even know this movie existed?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Stanley Kubrick has like a legit at least 4 or 5 war films, I'd say. There's like Paths of Glory, there's Fear and Desire, there's Full Metal Jacket, and I consider Doctor Strangelove a war movie. I mean, it has to be, like, duh. Even though it's not like doesn't have to do it's not about in the trenches. A lot of this movie isn't in the trenches either, which is interesting.
Absolutely.
But like it's more about like the higher ups at war and like, you know, what they're sort of doing as generals and stuff. And you can feel the elements of the serious topics of this movie sort of being dealt with. Oh, we got a little donation. Oh.
What was your wink there?
Here's my comment. I love you, beautiful ladies. Happy Tuesday. Well, I can hear it over my audio. Thank you, Maxwell. Oh, you're the best.
Max is amazing. I just want to. I want to see a blog from Max just talking about.
I would like musicals.
Weird musicals, like cult musicals, or just like actual.
Oh, actually, that reminds me of something. I did want to bring this up real quick. There's nothing new cinema bias. Maxwell, I saw the first show that's going to be opening back up in New York is the Office musical.
What?
Like it's an Office. It's a parody version of The Office with like musical parody songs that reference everything from. Oh, I put it up on my Instagram. It like references everything from like Sondheim to Hamilton to like whatever, and then like Michael's played by a woman, and I just want to be like, I just put a picture of that butterfly meme where it's like, is this? And it's like New York theater, because that seems like really not New York theater, but I could also see it being New York theater in like a very ironic way. So tell me what that's about.
I'm kind of curious. Yeah, definitely for sure. Back to this movie though, Paths of Glory. Like I mentioned, it was released in 1957, which was also the same year that same year that one of my other favorite war movies which is Bridge on the River Kwai, directed by David Lean.
How many war movies? How many war movies do you love, Alex? What's that
Not
about?
Many. Okay. All my favorite war movies are anti-war movies, including.
I love that you just have like a favorite war movie list. Crazy.
I'm a military brat. What can I say? But directed by Stanley Kubrick. Now, this was, I believe, the 4th or 5th film he ever made. So obviously, it's pretty huge. But this movie, when it was released, it had no Oscar noms. It did nothing. It was considered a box office bomb. It was made for $1 million, but also $300,000 of that production cost actually was a salary for Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, so, I didn't realize it was so soon after the war. This takes place during World War I, so I guess it wasn't that soon after that war. There's a lot I want to get into, but I feel like it's all plot based. So like let's maybe just do the plot and then we get into production. Because I do actually have some questions about several points in this movie. And I'd like to just know where to place it in time. Like, did this movie come before or after, like, Casablanca and that famous scene with, like, her singing in the nightclub? Because it seems like kind of the same scene.
I haven't seen Casablanca, to be honest.
Oh, I mean, like, neither have I the full way, but I know that scene's very famous, and that scene with her singing at the end was very similar. Maxwell says he has tickets to Hamilton. The first day it reopens on September 14th.
Stop bragging, Max. How dare you?
My mod is coming with it. Ooh, nom. But have you heard anything about this Office musical? And if so, what? Okay. That's it.
All right. Well, lady, you do have 1 minute on the clock to tell me this plot to the best of your abilities. Are you ready?
Yeah, like pretty much. Let's get done. Let's do it.
Tres, dos, uno.
Okay, so it's like World War I, and these guys are supposedly French, but like they're definitely not French. They're all like super duper American. Nothing about it seems French at all, except they keep referring themselves as France. So there's like this general, and he orders like that his own battalion be shot while they're trying to grab the anthill, which is like a piece of the war thing. And everyone retreats back, and then he decides that 3 of the men have to be killed for being cowardice deserters. And there's like a yeah, there's this thing. There's a whole trial where Kirk Douglas is like, what the hell? This is like a sham trial. It's like very Trial of the Chicago 7, where he's like, this isn't even a real trial. What is this bullshit? And they're like, we just have to kill these guys to like boost morale. And then he's like, well, okay. But then he ends up like getting the general messed up and like getting him fucked out of a job. And the other general's like, oh, great job. Now you have his job. And he's like, I don't really want that job. Like, this whole system is fucked. And then they watch this German girl who they were gonna like rape, but then instead listen to her sing. The end.
One. You're not wrong on any of that. You're right. There's a handful of things I do kind of want to mention is that you're right on all accounts, but also fun fact, this is based on a true story.
Yeah, I could tell. Like, there's no other reason to tell the story except there's no other reason for Kubrick to be telling this story except that it was based on a true story. Like, it's very like, you can't handle the truth. It's very like lawyer justice, but it's a very they're supposed to be French, and like I don't understand like why not make them just American soldiers, except this is based on true story.
I didn't realize it until recently, but 100% there are a ton of military or war courtroom dramas.
Yeah, well, but it's because courtroom dramas are inherently. I think it's because courtroom dramas are war courtroom tribunal kind of things are inherently interesting to us as viewers because they don't work like regular trials. Like, you're just in front of a military tribunal. You don't get judged by a jury of your peers. Like, it's just a whole different setup. That's what A Few Good Men's about. So I think people, and in this movie, it's like very clear. It's like a kangaroo court situation. There's no jury hearing them out. They don't present any evidence. There's no stenographer. They don't even hear the crimes listed against them. Like, the whole thing's just rigged. It's all for show, but like showing whom? Like it's all just like a puppet show.
Yeah, it's based off the book of the same title, written by Humphrey Cobb, that was written in the 30s. But yeah, it's really sad. It's definitely a sad story overall. Now, specifically, I'm kind of curious. What were some of your big takeaway? What were some of like the big takeaways from this movie? Was there any particular performance or scene in particular that grabbed you? I know you said that this movie was a lot easier to digest than you thought going into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of well, first off, I think there's a lot that we missed in that 60-second review. So if anything that that we want to like go back over, because a lot more happens than just some guys get on trial and it's like a fake trial and they get shot.
Okay, so specifically, so I feel bad. I can't remember like the specific names, but
who cares about the names? Kirk Douglas.
There's a lot of French names, and I'm like, I don't know. I remember the Moreau one, but
there's a guy with a big scar,
There's a French guy. He is told that, hey, you're going to get promoted if these group of people pretty much try to take over the anthill, and they tried doing it. Only they were like a ton of the people were killed almost instantaneous. It was considered horrible. Tons and tons of casualties, and
like in the middle of that, they get a phone call in the trenches. I didn't even know they had those. They had phones in the trenches that were like, hey, start shooting on your own people.
Attack now, right now.
Yeah, like attack your own people. And like the guy's like, what? Like, I need that in writing. And that's where it gets very Doctor Strangelove, because you're like, yeah, like even if that was true, like how is he supposed to get a piece of paper to you? Like, it's crazy you guys have phones.
It's not so much it's like trying to get the paper. It's just like they're trying to essentially buy their time. They're just like, hey, we know for a fact this isn't going to work, so we need to buy time, and so we're going to be trying to demand it in paper form or whatever it may be, just because it will probably go through more people, and more people will realize this is a shitty ass idea.
But the thing they're trying to buy time for is not even going towards the anthill. The thing they're trying to buy time for is shooting at themselves, or like shooting at the other French people. I mean, like, I was getting a little bit confused on that point. It was a little bit awkward because, it's war. But there's that disconnect between like the generals up on high who have tea and the parties and they go to the opera and sort of their Machiavellian sort of schematics, and then the people on the ground, like the grunts and the generals who are being who are forced to like see this from like a so we get like early on we get this story, this sort of like this little side story that's kind of done almost like in a brush off way, of this guy who gets shot by his commanding officer. Well, like, I guess they went AWOL and then they came back, but like one of the two guys ended up accidentally getting shot.
He had, I can't remember what the word is called, but something shock.
Oh, shell shock. Yeah, it was the guy with shell shock. The guy.
Yes.
I
And
forgot that guy.
Yeah, essentially he froze and he started crying and he's like, I can't, oh my God. And he started like hyperventilating and he's, oh my gosh, it's such a scary moment that feels way too real for that anyone would go have that experience, that reaction. And because in the meantime, this person is like, knowing for a fact, should they move like another few inches, they are gonna die. Literally, because he right above him
before the anthill, by the way,
bodies on top of bodies.
Yeah,
and it's just such a scary moment. And meanwhile, he's also told at the same time, later on, that he's gonna die if he doesn't go. So it's just such a weird, conflicting moment.
So that the guy who ends up getting shot, or is that his friend? Because one of the two gets shot by a member of their own side accidentally, and then the guy kind of tries to frame him up by putting him as one of the three guys that's going to be tried for murder or for desertion.
Okay, so that's so that guy ends up being tried for murder. Yes,
not murder, desertion. I'm talking about like the guy who was like ended. Okay, so what happens is, there's two guys. One has shell shock. I mean, they both have shell shock, but like on the way back or whatever, a member of their own forces, who's a higher, like their commanding officer, ends up killing one of them, and then is like, "Oh shit! Like, you know what? Like, let's just be cool about this, and like, I'm gonna doctor the report to say that he was shot by the other side." And the guy's like, "Oh, that's fucked up. Like, I'm not gonna let you do that." And the guy's like, "Well, who are they gonna believe?" And that's like before all this anthill stuff happens. Yeah. And then the anthill stuff happens, and basically they're like, heads gotta roll. Like the commanders from 3 different teams need to pick 3 different people to like serve up the heads of.
So essentially, what the officers are giving him an ultimatum where they're literally telling them, "Hey, a lot of the people were like scared shitless, and they didn't follow directions, and even though it was a bad thing to do, they should have not pursued and moved forward because it was a bad decision from the higher ups because they were gonna die. It was a complete failure from the get-go, but they
and they knew that. And Kirk Douglas knew that going in. He's like, this is a terrible plan. Like, I don't know why the guy. At some point, I thought this movie was going to be about how that guy turned out to be a German spy, like the commanding officer, because he seems so intent on tanking the French chances. Like he's just sending in
tanking it, but he was insistent. He's like, well, I'm going to take the risk just because even if I have like a 10% chance of success, I'm going to take the risk because I could get promoted.
Yeah. And they're like, well, and hundreds of bodies and like, you know, and we are given a sense that this guy is like, you know, he is totally heartless, but we get a sense of like how he got there. I mean, he's got like a bayonet face. Like his head was obviously at some point, like someone took a knife to it and like kind of sawed him like a Joker smile. This guy's seen action. So this guy's never like, it's not like he hasn't been in war and he's just a total like fop. This guy's a general.
You're right. No, absolutely. He's definitely a general that has seen action, but at the same time, it felt like he was in a situation that has not been in the trenches, like actual trenches, in a very long time.
Oh yeah. I just don't think shit.
Yeah, like if like I remember learning in school, like a lot of generals and a lot of officers, they didn't know how to navigate World War I because they had their mindset still on battlefield work from like the Civil War and when they're for American soldiers. And
wait, what Civil War in France?
No, I mean like I'm not referring to like American.
Oh, gotcha.
American officers, but by extension, a lot of American officers going into World War II would still have the mindset that they had to work like it was World War I, the Great War, and so the idea of using machinery on the battlefield, the idea of using chemical warfare was such a new thing that they were like, what the fuck is this tank? But anyway, we're getting off topic though. Going back to the movie. But he was definitely, at that point, he's a career officer, like a career military officer, obviously. And so I felt like, honestly, it has been a while since he has actually been in the actual battlefield. He has seen some shit, absolutely. But he has disassociated himself from that group of people so much that he's willing to sacrifice these people. He has like so little regard for these people, these soldiers, in order to rise through the ranks in the military.
Absolutely. I think that you know, again, like Doctor Strangelove, Fear and Desire, I haven't seen yet, but like I don't want to see that one. I know what happens in that one. That's my Alex one, where I'm like, I know what's going to happen in that movie, and it's not going to be pretty. But anyway, I feel like this is like the horrors of war, but it's still like a pretty gentlemanly horrors of war movie, because we don't end up getting that much time in the trenches. Half this movie is really spent in the trial afterwards, and it's Kirk Douglas being like, we knew this was going to fail to the get-go. Like, I tried telling you this is going to fail. My men didn't desert. They didn't go AWOL. It's not cowardice to be like, I don't want to go into a suicide mission or to see all these bodies piling up and then retreat. And 3, it's like someone ordered that their own troops start shooting at us. And like, what the hell was that? Like, why are we being shot at?
Nothing but bodies in front of them.
Yeah, literally. Like, I don't even get the point of why he was ordering people to shoot at each other.
Well, so these officers were kind of given the ultimatum where they were like, hey, we don't want to cause you any more trouble. So in order to kind of get past this situation, let's bargain. We're not asking for 100 people to be killed for cowardice reasons, because
he wanted like 100. He wanted hundreds of people to be killed. Yeah.
He wanted hundreds of people shot. This guy that really fucked up and so he's like, hey, instead, each group give me 10 guys. And so people like characters like Lieutenant.
They only ended up being 3 guys, right?
It started being like 10 guys per group, and they ended up
they're like negotiating it down. And then like the guy's acting all benevolent. He's like, you know what? Forget about the 10 from each troop. I just say, give me like 1 from each thing. And everyone's like, oh, like the other dude in the room was like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, that's compromise. And you're like,
so they're trying to decide amongst themselves how they should go about this process. Meanwhile, one guy was already on his deathbed. And he literally, like, remember on his, he was like,
one guy, he gets punched while they're in the stress of like this situation. Another soldier punches him and gives him a concussion, like, and fractures his skull. But that doesn't happen until after. He gets hurt during the battle, but he's got that like wound, and what they say is like that could have been a self-inflicted wound. Like, the whole thing is a farce. It really did remind me of Trial of Chicago 7, which I saw recently, which was like another thing where it's like, this is a kangaroo court. The whole thing is rigged against them to begin with. We're not even watching the movie to see if they get off. We know that they probably don't. But we're watching this movie to see how like the lawyer navigates this, and like how this, you know, he's both a lawyer and the person that was in charge of the troops. So like it's really weird. And then like then his commanding officer to imply that that he was just trying to get the other dude out of the way so he could take his job. I mean, it was pretty intense. It just seemed like I don't even understand the point of shooting your own troops for morale, whether it's for cowardice or like for during the battlefield point. I don't understand.
The idea of killing someone for cowardice reasons is to not only boost morale, is just to let other soldiers know, hey, do you even want the opportunity to go back home? You better do what you signed up to do, essentially.
Yeah, but like they talk about it boosting morale in the way that like a fun day at the fair would boost morale. They're like, it's good for soldiers to see other soldiers get shot, and it's like, I feel like they do that a lot.
Only officers that are so disassociated would actually believe that, which is really revolting. Something I'm kind of okay. So I do kind of want to let you know. I do kind of want to tell you a little bit about the reception behind this movie. Now, I do. This movie, obviously, like I mentioned, it had no awards accolades. It did get like 1 BAFTA nomination for like best writing. But that was it. But it was considered a box office bomb. It was actually banned in quite a few European countries, such as Spain, Switzerland, France, and Belgium, as well as Germany. And it was banned up until like the late 70s, early 80s for being, in their minds, very anti-military, but also a lot of these countries associated this movie with making the French military and French army in particular for being cowards, and for this movie being considered a propaganda film against the against the French military in particular.
I mean, it did seem weird. Like, they didn't even try to have accents. They were just like,
Yeah.
we're French. And you're like, really? Because you seem awfully American, Kirk Douglas. And they're like, no, we're French. And you're like, I guess, like, what shows me that you're French? And they're like, at the end, we'll say the word cafe. And somebody will be at a cafe. And, like, that's literally the only reference point to that you have of them being French. We haven't talked about the end scene yet either, by the way, which is a crazy good end scene. Because we're told during this movie that, like, Kirk Douglas gives a speech near the end where he's like, don't you have, like, no empathy? Like where is, like, the empathy of this court? Like, don't you understand that these are your soldiers? These are our men. Like, why are you doing this, basically? And, like, it's sort of about, like, how war strips you from all your humanity. And what happens at the end is he goes to buy a cafe and he looks in the window and these soldiers, his soldiers, are hooting and hollering because they've captured a German girl and they're, like, forcing her to, like, perform on stage, and there's all this sexual innuendo, and you're like, oh no, I know where this is going. It's going in a Fear and Desire type of direction. Again, a movie I haven't seen, but I've seen the cover of and read the back blurb of, and I do not want to see. But, like, you think it's going in a really dark direction, and then she starts singing, and she starts singing in German, and they, like, all start quieting down, and, like, they all start, like, realizing that she's, like, a person, and they all start humming along, and suddenly they're, like, all, like, they don't know the words because they don't speak German, but they're suddenly all, like sort of singing wordlessly along with her, and they're crying, and you see in that moment that, like, Kirk Douglas can see there's still some hope for these troops because they are able to recognize the enemy as human. And it's a really nice ending that doesn't really fit with the rest of the themes of the movie, but it's a beautiful ending.
Yeah, it's a very, I feel like it's apparently Stanley Kubrick and Kirk Douglas, when they presented this movie to the studios, that's with their cut and everything, they were pissed.
Really?
The studios were pissed because they actually wanted a happier ending. They wanted something more.
We're like, where the guys didn't get shot? Like, but that's.
Well, they just wanted a happier ending, and they wanted something with a nice bow on it where there's cheering as a parade or something. But Kirk Douglas was so adamant that this needs to be it. And he, like, apparently he threatened his contract at the company at the time.
The studio. $300,000 he was getting for this film, which was a ton of money.
Well, that was equivalent to $9 million.
That's what I'm saying. That's the thing. He threatened to take away 1/3 of the budget, like to walk on 1/3 of the budget of this film. That's quite a lot of money.
So but it's really crazy. It was also, like, during the making of this movie was plagued with problems because a handful of actors, including such as had a hard time working with Kubrick. He's very much a perfectionist. He will do a lot of these very exhausting long scenes, like sometimes up to 50 to 75 times. But there was one.
Was that happening here though? Because I noticed, like, a couple edits that seemed like weird edits, and I was like, oh, did Kubrick, like, forget to do something in this movie?
Well, there's actually a handful of scenes where they did up to 75 edits per scene.
Oh, that's fun. Wow, he just seems like such a delightful man to work for. And maybe that's why I have a problem. Like,
super fun. Super fun.
I mean, like, if you ruin Shelley Duvall's mind, like, I don't have to care about that. Like, I don't know. I think my bias from Kubrick stems from the whole "we're all tired here" Shelley, like, mythos of how awful he was on the set of The Shining, just, like, literally harassing Shelley. Yeah.
And got everyone to, like, really isolate her and make her feel awful. But one of the actors, he actually played one of the main characters. His name was his name was Timothy Carey. He played the character Maurice Farrell, but he ended up having they ended up pretty much rewriting his scenes quite a bit, and they used, like, body doubles and everything quite a bit because he faked his own kidnapping for publicity.
Fuck yeah. That's how bad you want to get out of a Kubrick movie. You're like,
he apparently had a very bad relationship with Kubrick, and he didn't want to put up with all this stuff. But he did it for publicity, forcing Kubrick to fire him. And in the remaining scenes, they used reshot a few scenes, and they ended up using body. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm, like, burping. What character was he in the story? Like, I'm assuming he's one of the three men, but, like.
Maurice Farrell. I can't remember.
Was he, like, the guy? Because I noticed, like, a couple weird shots, and so I'm just wondering. He's one of the three guys that gets shot, right? Like, that's what we're talking about. He's one of the three. I think Maurice is one of the three. he's not the giant. So there's like a dude who's definitely like he seems like he has giantism or whatever you call it, giganticism. Like he has that very deep voice. He's like the one that's like the social degenerate, they call him, or he calls himself. Then there's the one who accidentally draws, like who just draws the wrong lot. Like they're just drawing sticks in one platoon to see who's going to get like put up for cowardice, and he draws the wrong stick. And then there's the guy who gets chosen because his commanding officer shot his friend and he like knows about it. So all three of those are like the three dudes who are getting put up, and like the I think in real life there were four of them. But like three works better for the story and for them to have three different reasons that they're all there. Like one is a socially degenerate or has been deemed such by his commanding officer. Another such has been framed by his commanding officer essentially, or being like taken care of, like, getting, shot so the commanding officer never gets in trouble. And then the third guy is just the luck of the draw. And they all have like distinct arcs. I think the one who lost the friend is the one who got that giant cut on his forehead. So they asked him, like, where were you during the battle? And he was like, yeah, I had like a bomb go off and like I was blown unconscious. And like, they're like, you have any evidence? And he's like, well, I'm like super duper hurt. And they're like, yeah, you could have done that to yourself. The point is, like, this guy couldn't have even been a coward because he didn't even run away. He was like unconscious during the events of the battle. Then there's, I can't remember if he's the guy with like the family and the guy that unluckily drew the number, or if he was the guy who had the friend. One of those two guys. And one of them is a drunkard. I can't remember which one of them that is either, and punches a priest at one point and then gets punched in the face so hard by the other dude that he fractures his skull open. And like basically they try to keep him alive so long enough to be shot. And like the irony there is, an indictment on the whole prison industrial complex that we have today, where it's like, yeah, you can't die until we want to kill you. Exactly.
It's definitely an interesting movie that it was considered critically acclaimed in spite of having no awards in any category. Obviously, even it was like, apparently it was one of the first films that really put Kubrick on the map for a lot of people. He ended up having a really great relationship with Stanley Kubrick creatively. They ended up doing Spartacus right after this. And even Winston Churchill, he actually commented on this movie saying this is a highly accurate depiction of trench warfare and sometimes misguided workings of the military mind. He recommended people watch it at the time over in the UK. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, here, can you hear me? Hey, sorry.
Oh, yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, so like I was saying, there's definitely some themes here that I think, and this isn't very me. Hey, Ryan. Let's pull up some pictures for Ryan since he's actually never seen this movie. I think that there's some good examples I can find in just a second of the shots. Like, I don't notice cinematography. I'm not a big cinematography person. I'm a big dialogue person, and this movie did very well in terms of dialogue. Like, again, I don't like war movies, but this movie, like, it just is engaging, and it's not like it's serious and like the topics are serious, but it's also just like really, it's more of like a cerebral seriousness. It's more like dealing with the big issues, even though you feel for these soldiers, and they do a lot with the cinematography here. And that's what I want to talk about, was like the tight shots of the people in war versus like the wide shots of like the high-ranking military people, like in their nice opulent homes. Like you get this huge sense of like how big their lives are, and then you get this really claustrophobic sense of how like the soldiers live their lives. And I was like, oh, good use of mise en scene. Kubrick, like, but like, who cares what I think about that?
It's a very, I mean, it's a film that's now regarded as like one of the, as far as like one of the better films by Kubrick in terms of script, in terms of just film writing. But a lot of people, from what I've read, well, like, as far as like reviews and things like that, I haven't seen so much commentary on the cinematography all that much, because I agree with you. It's a very stunning movie, and I actually really like they went in the direction of making a lot of these really great tight shots, because it, like you said, it just emphasizes a feeling of trench warfare during the first half, and also the ridiculousness of the trench warfare where everything is claustrophobic versus the pretty much the castles with the officers and these grand ballrooms and tea parties and these massive maps.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous, and it just
you know what it kind of reminded me almost a little bit, like, although Inglourious Basterds doesn't do a lot of this in terms of showing you like what the war looked like in terms of like the actual fight, like the fighting on the trenches, but like you got that sense of like the opulence of like the officers like living situations, like when you meet Mike Myers as Churchill, or you're like versus like when you're in the bunker scene where they're doing like the the 2 drinks or 3 drinks or whatever. I think Tarantino does a really good job of doing that Kubrick thing of using the cinematography and the mise en scene to sort of change your opinion about certain things without deliberately saying it in the dialogue. Like, you have to be looking at the screen to notice like there is some irony between what you're seeing and what's in the script.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's definitely, I feel like, well, Inglourious Basterds in particular is very on the nose. It's a movie about people at a movie theater that are making a propaganda film.
Well, it's got that in it. It's definitely that's in it.
Which is, yeah, then that's in it. And this movie is literally in its own way very much in Inglourious Basterds. It is a propaganda film in its own way about killing Nazis and almost glamorizing the idea of killing Nazis, which is
it's a pretty glamorous idea.
It is, yeah, exactly. It is in its own way a very glamorous idea for sure.
The idea of like having the Jewish Americans come and like kill Hitler was like a glamorization of a certain idea, but like I don't think he did that. That was an accident. That was a very deliberate choice to do historical revisionism, much in the way Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is historical revisionism of what if the Manson murders were able to be thwarted. So like he's just doing this historical revisionist stuff, and I get it, and I kind of respect it. But like at the time I saw Inglourious Basterds, I was like, that's not what the fuck happened. What the fuck happened? Like, that's not how the war ended.
This is war fantasy film. This is like right up there with. Although
Daniel Bruhl didn't snipe anybody. He's fine.
I love Overlord so much. Have you seen Overlord?
Of course, I've seen Overlord. Right, not of course, but it's a horror movie, and like he's in that. I mean, Daniel Bruhl's not in that.
More fantasy, more fantasy.
Russell is in that. 2 people from Falcon and the Winter Soldier are in those 2 movies respectively. That's Wyatt Russell.
Who's the other person?
Daniel Bruhl is in Inglourious Basterds. He's the German sniper that has a crush.
No, I know that. No, I'm talking about like
Wyatt Russell is in Overlord.
Yeah. I knew that one.
Those 2 are the 2 respectively.
Like there's another person from Winter Soldier that is in Overlord, and I was like, who am I missing?
No, there's just one Winter Soldier person and 2 Winter Soldier people in one each in Inglourious Basterds and Overlord. I just thought that's why you brought it up, Overlord. But it's a good film. There might be somebody else from Falcon the Winter Soldier and Overlord. Maybe a background guy. It had that dude who was from Game of Thrones, who was the
someone in the chat, let us know if we're missing anyone. That'd be much appreciated.
Yeah.
I would have to say, Kirk Douglas. He also mentioned he's amazing in this role. Now, this is also one of the now that I think about it, I don't know. I haven't seen that many movies with Kirk Douglas overall. But do you think?
I just want to talk about how Cindy Grillo is living up to their name just in this one comment alone. Good job. way to be on the nose.
Very intense statement. But this is definitely a wonderful role for Kirk Douglas, and I say that as someone that has very limited knowledge of his filmography. But do you feel like you want to see more of him in movies? Do you want to see Spartacus or any of his other films?
Is he Spartacus? Is he the one? He's Spartacus, but is he Spartacus? I know there's like a lot of Spartaci in that film. Isn't that the whole point? He's Spartacus. Okay. There's a lot of Spartacuses, though, right? Spartaki.
Yeah. I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus, but he is the actual Spartacus.
Okay, and what is Spartacus again? It's like just a dude.
Well, it's pretty much like an ancient Roman uprising of the slaves.
Okay.
At the time.
So wait, he's a guy, right? That's his name, Spartacus.
Yeah, his name is Spartacus. Yes.
Okay. By the way, this is the guy I was talking about who I think is, he's got a very, very deep voice. He's very tall. He's the one that's like supposed to be the social degenerate. But like, even if you see the way this is shot, like the foreground versus the background versus what we just saw in that former picture where everyone was crowded into the frame, it just kind of gives you the sense of like how they sort of play with scope. Like Kubrick really does have this. What am I gonna say about him? The dude who spent like 100 takes, didn't put a lot of thought into each shot. No, he clearly did. I just don't. I don't know if even if it's a masterpiece, even if you end up with Barry Lyndon, I don't know if that is worth all the cruelty that is inflicted in making the films that he made. So I think that's
a whole conversation.
I mean, that's a whole conversation we can have right now.
It's like as much as I love The Shining for a lot of different ways, I don't love it the way a lot of people love it, but I really like it. Was it worth the absolute trauma it caused some of its actors? Was it worth?
It's like the question you have to ask about war. Like, was it worth like the cost of like lives or the cost of mental health or whatever? And like, unlike other art forms, like the other art forms, any other art form essentially. Any other art form besides maybe music, and that's debatable, like Whiplash would be a good example of how this is debatable in music, but any other art form is a singular activity. If you have a statement you want to make, if you have a thought in your head and you want to turn it into art, you just do it, and it's your cross to bear, and you're the one who has to suffer the consequences, and it's no one else's real problem.
Writing as well?
Writing is a solitary activity. Creating art, for the most part, is you can collaborate, but you're not going to be ruining people's lives because you decide to take 100 takes of the same shot. Like, you are not causing actual PTSD to your actors or cinematographers or crafts and crew of whatever capacity. Whereas Kubrick like definitely did and knew what he was doing and would do it to like psychologically manipulate his actors because he didn't believe that he could get good performances otherwise. It's silly.
And I do wonder if there's I wonder what he was like as a person in terms of
probably a piece of shit.
He was apparently he was very quiet. But he wasn't temperamentalish. Something really got to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That guy. I mean, what you're saying is like he wasn't hysterical. I mean, that's what you're just telling me is like he wasn't a hysterical. Like, okay, he
wasn't like James Cameron or Michael Bay.
I mean, like, or like he doesn't have like the flip outs on camera, but sure. But like my favorite story, or like my least favorite story, but the most enlightening story about Kubrick is like the time in The Shining where he made Shelley Duvall do like 100 takes of like her reaction to Jack, like slamming the axe in the door, and like at the end she's just like she's exhausted, she's disheveled, she's been screaming and crying, and then he just keeps making her do it again and again and again until she's like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I can't do this anymore. And he just turns to her and he goes, yeah, we're all tired here, Shelley, like again. And you get the sense that like it's just like the dude from Whiplash, like he was just a monster because he thought the ends justified the means, but that's not that dissimilar to war.
Art requires sacrifice.
But art requires sacrifice on terms of the artist, not in terms of like the collect. Because that's what movie making is an interesting thing, because movie making is so much more collaborative than anything besides maybe theater or music. But like it involves a level of, I feel like more like it is a good war analogy because it's like shit rolls downhill, right? Like the director just wants his vision, and then he can just terrorize everyone beneath him.
It's really frustrating that I know, even like for Eyes Wide Shut, Nicole Kidman said that that movie took like a year. It was like, to date, it's a Guinness World Record for like world's longest film shoot essentially. And
what?
Or Eyes Wide Shut, because the filming took like a year and 2 months or something like that.
Is that the longest it's ever taken to shoot a film? There's Boyhood. That took like 12 years.
Oh, I mean, that was not consistent though.
Oh, that's right.
It wasn't like every single day.
Fuck, and that movie wasn't even that great. Just straight up hot take. Eyes Wide Shut is like kind of lame, and like it's just like it's got like one cool scene in it that we all remember of like the fucking masks, and everything else in that movie. Like, raise your hand if you remember Lily Sabowski being in that film. All I remember about that film is like the final line, the fact that he's like a hot doctor, the fact that he has a wife, although what she does over the film eludes me.
Nicole Kidman has mentioned in interviews that as much as she was grateful to participate and work with Stanley Kubrick at the time, she said making that movie, that exhausting process with him was really hit the nail in the coffin with her relationship with Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah, well that was the nail in the coffin, honey. If that's the nail in the coffin, and not the
No, it was just
Scientology.
like it was like between him, like their relationship, like their individual scenes, and having to do it as intensely every single day as it was. It just kind of the shooting the movie in that environment forced them to reshape their relationship temporarily.
I want to talk for a
Yeah.
second about this comment that Ryan said. Tom said Kubrick made him reshoot 27 times walking through a door. Hey, you know what that reminds me of? The scene in The Master, the movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman about L. Ron Hubbard, essentially, where he makes Joaquin Phoenix walk back and forth across the room and like calls it part of his religion. He's just like walk back and forth across the room again and again and again. So like it makes sense to me that Tom Cruise is a Scientologist because it's basically just working on a Stanley Kubrick film as a religion.
Maybe that's his teeth.
Yeah, mic drop.
Maybe Stanley Kubrick is a Scientologist.
I just think that Scientology is done the same kind of abusive hierarchy power structure that Hollywood has, which is why.
Pyramid scheme?
No, I'm saying it's a pyramid scheme. Yeah. I'm saying specifically the way that they kind of make you do things over and over through repetition lends itself very well to the Hollywood system of like get into character, do the same thing, like do method. Like walk the same beat 100 times, do this over and over and over, and sort of until it's drilled into you and you're broken down. Also, not unlike a soldier, like doing basic training. So, my brain's firing on all 3 cylinders that it has this evening.
Yeah,
Jesus.
I really do agree with you. Just for any actor, it can be depending on the movie, depending on the environment. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that goes into making a good movie, but there's also a lot of factors that goes into making a very toxic movie environment, obviously, and depending on who's in charge, what you're doing specifically, and also, let's face it, especially if you're a young actor or if you're just new, and you're maybe you are established, but you're not.
One second. Oh, John Lastrina donated $10 saying, I don't have a question, but have some of my money. Hi, Alex. Thank you, John Lastrina. Hi, Alex, says John Lastrina. What about me? What am I, chopped liver?
We need to do another Fast and Furious movie.
I've watched them all now.
Yeah, just for him. We need to have him on.
You know what we need to watch, actually?
What?
We should watch the movie that is technically not canon for Fast and Furious, but kind of is because it's the one that features Han, Better Luck Tomorrow, the one that features Han as a character. Yeah. Before he was in a Fast and Furious movie. That I would like to see. I keep meaning to put that on my list.
I know Bibbs mentioned in a tweet a little bit ago that it's actually one of his favorite Fast and Furious films. And he's like, people forget it, but it's awesome.
Because he's being a little bit of a troll because it's not technically the Fast and Furious film because Fast and Furious didn't exist when this film came out. But it's a good tweet. I like that, and I do really want to see it. I do want to see Han's Genesis, Han Solo. John Lastrina is going, yes, Drew, 100%. Cool, we'll do that. Let's do that. I want to talk a little bit more about this one guy. You said that fakes his own kidnapping, which is hilarious. Like not hilarious, but he basically Jesse Summerall did.
Well, let me see if I can find out just a little bit more information about him and the specifics.
Well, I'm just saying, right now I'll just go real quick through the controversies they have on Wikipedia. So they says, in France, both active and retired personnel from the French military vehemently criticized the film and its portrayal of the French army. The French government placed an enormous pressure on United Artists not to release the film in France. It was eventually shown in 1975. So, Jesus Christ, way later, 20 years later was shown.
Yeah, oh my gosh, he worked a lot. Oh my gosh.
So in Germany, the film was taken away from the Berlin Film Festival. So they wouldn't have the straining relations with France, and also because it's very anti-German, or not anti-German actually. It seems anti-French. Yeah. And then in Spain, the right-wing governor of Francisco Franco objected to the film, and then that one didn't get shown in in Spain till 1986. Switzerland, the neutral place. It was banned there because they considered it incontestably offensive to France, her judicial system, and her army until 1970. And then the film was banned in all United States military establishments, both at home and overseas, due to its content. While people really, really did not like its portrayal of the military, even though ostensibly this is not about the U.S. military.
It was not. It was a lot. Some of those countries, it was banned up until the late 70s, early 80s. It was actually banned in a handful of U.S. states to be shown in some in some theaters.
I mean,
but also it wasn't allowed to be shown to.
You know what? I guess I can get why. I can get behind why, which is that it was so close after the end of World War II, and we're like talking. Yeah,
it's a true story. As well.
It is not true story, but it's less about that and more about the ideas of like the idea that would seem very like anti-American at the time, that your commanding officer would lead you like into death, that the military would be wrong, that they would have done your boys wrong, that they would have led them into death, instead of like, you know, the chain of command being something right and just. And even though this is about the French military, it is all American actors and they are very, very American, and the same thing seems very American. And it's, you know, right after World War II, or sorry, 59 is not right after, but it's between World War II and Vietnam. I could see how like this movie did not go over well, especially because it's hard to place in a genre, right? It's not quite a war film in the sense that like it's an
anti-war film.
Well, yeah, most war films are anti-war war films. Let's be honest. No war film is like, see how great this is.
But there's a lot of films, especially back then, where they were very, not so much propaganda films, but they really glorified. They really idealized this sense of being a heroic soldier for
it's Saving Private Ryan versus this movie.
For freedom, things like that. And
the idea that
you're right. There's a lot of anti-war movies.
No, it's not even the anti-war movies. It's that none of these movies make war seem cool. There's never been a war movie where like that seems like something I want to be a part of, at least for me. But there are movies that make the soldiers. Sorry,
American Sniper.
I don't think that movie made war.
12 soldiers. Cool. 12 soldiers.
But it doesn't make it look cool. Like it still makes it.
Yes, it does. They have awesome theme music. Then 12 Soldiers is, I feel like I'm getting the title wrong. It's about a group. It's based on a true story, which is it's a really
okay. Well, my point more being that you know, there's Saving Private Ryan, in which the military is shown to be this very heroic, self-sacrificing, like do it for your country. Your commanding officer will take a bullet for you. Like the chain of command has your best interest at heart. Like you are being like tasked with this heroic mission, even if the war itself is ultimately like, you know, being run by government plutocrats or whatever, and it, you know, doesn't speak to your interests as a soldier. Your commanding officer does, and your troop leader does, and you know, these are the people you trust. Sort of like the idea of like trusting cops, right? Like they're your cops, they're your bosses, they're your big brothers, they're like all these different things to you, like the whole military system. And I think what Kubrick does is like both in this and in Full Metal Jacket, and I'm gonna guess, just go on a limb and say Fear and Desire is kind of like this too, is like be like, yeah, all those people are kind of like fucking crazy too. Like your commanding officer is gonna like get shot in the head because he pushes Vincent D'Onofrio too far. Like even before they even get out of basic training, he's just gonna you're just going to push one guy right off the ledge with your like whiplash sort of attitude. And I think that that's a very subversive idea that like I could see how that could be very, very threatening to people like in the military, to have this idea that like they don't have your best interest at heart, because that could sow like a lot of discontent and mutiny.
Especially so soon after World War II. Yeah. So, I mean, especially if it's one thing, if it's like 50 years later or something like that.
Well, there's always war, you know? It would sort of like be making a movie right now about like cops that would be like, and all cops are and it's a movie from the cops' perspective, and it's like a Bad Lieutenant. If we made like Bad Lieutenant today, but it was all about them just killing black people, people would be like, yo, and like a lot of states would try to ban the film, being like, this is anti-cop and like this is anti-police, and this film is like really prejudiced. And like you can totally imagine sketching the idea of an anti-police film being released today with what it was like to release an anti-war film from like a commanding officer's perspective, like the one dissenting officer. You can imagine that, or I can't.
Yeah, it's kind of struggle. Have you seen Hail Caesar?
Of course, I've seen Hail Caesar. I haven't seen Bridge of Spies, or they're two war films.
It's directed by David Lean. It has Alec Guinness. Is a wonderful movie.
Wait, you're not talking about Hail Caesar, and Hail Caesar's the one.
No, that's Bridge on the River Kwai. Yeah, but Hail Caesar has a character in the movie that essentially fakes his own kidnapping, played by
George.
He
gets real kidnapped, but then he actually just ends up liking the thing.
Exactly, absolutely. But it kind of reminded me of this story in particular because Timothy Carey, he ends up having a very extended career. He ends up working.
This guy? This actor?
Yeah, he ends up working up until 1985. Really consistently.
Just give me the liner notes. Who is this guy? What did he do?
Okay, so he was in the Chips TV series. He did a whole bunch of stuff. He did a whole bunch of movies.
Tell me about his kidnapping though. Tell me did they leave a note? What happened here? I need to know all about this.
Okay, so apparently there was a handwritten note requesting a very large ransom, and he apparently wrote it himself with his other hand.
And so he left a note, and he was left it in his trailer. I mean, he was I want 5,000 more. He's trying to negotiate up his salary, but trying to be kidnapped.
Apparently they found out, but the thing is, he wasn't. As a result, he wasn't on set for an extended period of time, and I don't know the exact number that was requested, but eventually he was found. He was clearly not kidnapped, and he could have returned at any time. But at that point, Kubrick was like, "Fuck him." No,
yeah. Apparently, I'm saying that he personally. Now, this also seems like it's trying to pawn off what Kubrick would just do normally. But it says here that it was very disruptive on set, and he caused one scene to be retaken 57 times due to his behavior. Or that scene just needed to be retaken 57 times because that's Kubrick. Was 57 times the low amount? Was it we had to cut that short because of this guy's behavior? Because that doesn't seem like that many times. It looks like he is the really tall guy. He looked like he might have been
that man guy. Yeah, because I know in the picture, it's just it looks like a silly picture of him where he's kind of thing.
Yeah, he looks like he was. I think he was the very, very tall man because it looks like one of his first movies was Billy Wilder's The Big Carnival.
Yeah, that is.
So there we go. And he was in Kubrick's The Killing. Okay, so he was very disruptive. He faked his own kidnapping to generate publicity, and then they fired him. And the film does not depict 3 condemned soldiers during the battle scene, and a double was used during a scene when the priest hears the confession. Okay, fine. Great. But yes, he was in a ton of movies afterwards, which I love, including a bunch of John Cassavetes films. So it's funny to me here, and Francis Ford Coppola, he was supposed to play Lucas Brasi in The Godfather, but he turned it down so he could do a pilot, which is hilarious. Yeah, this didn't hurt his career at all. And then this guy auditioned for Reservoir Dogs, and the screenplay was dedicated to him. So that's fucking dope. Good job, guy, for having a great career and thinking of a really creative way to get out of that really stressful, horrible situation and trying to negotiate your salary.
I kind of don't blame you. I really don't.
I mean, it is it's not even a Jesse Sommelier. What was that guy's name? The guy who tried to fake his own beating up thing by these 2 guys. It turned out that it was all stunt and he had himself beat up for money. Jesse Smollett.
Yeah, I can't remember his last name, but that sounds about right. I just remember him as one of the singer guys from.
He's one of the guys from the Empire, and then his sister, I think, or cousin, is the chick from Lovecraft Country and Birds of Prey. Justice. Her name is Justice. Anyway, point being, it's shitty when that guy did it. It's hilarious when this guy did it because it was not supposed to be racially motivated, and it seems like he just didn't want to work in this fucking movie anymore. Thought of a very clever way to get out of it. Jesse Smollett Bell, I think. Yes, that is right. Smollett. Like mole.
More like mole. Mole. Yeah, it's honestly, I'm kind of curious because he was a very consistently working actor, and he was a very successful actor as well.
He worked with Kubrick before. They worked together on The Killing. This was not a new hire.
So I kind of wonder where he was just seriously, Stanley, fuck, I'm done. We've done it. I can't do this anymore.
I really need to know this whole story here, and I'm sorry to harp on this point, but the idea that he was very disruptive on set. He caused a take to be done 57 times, but every story I've ever read about Kubrick, every take is done 57 times. There's no take that's okay, we got that one in the can. So I don't know if like 57 times was like Kubrick cutting it short because this guy sucked.
Steven Spielberg.
Wait, what is this? Cinema Girl? Is this a conspiracy theory? Or is this true? I don't know if that's true or not. We would have to fact check that.
That sounds not right.
It might be. I don't know. Like R. Kelly, Lee Daniels. I don't know.
But Lee Daniels, the director.
Lee Daniels did Empire, and R. Kelly.
No, I mean, like, but I mean, that's.
But no, think about all the R. Kelly stuff. I mean, the R. Kelly shit. Yeah, well, you told like 5 years ago, R. Kelly was running an underage sex cult. Like, I wouldn't have believed you. I'll have to look that up.
He married Aaliyah when she was 14, 15.
Yeah,
and
I would have to look this up.
He's only been dating girls like that age since, but.
Let's put a pin in that one. I don't want to start spreading fake news, but that's an interesting theory. My friend was the showrunner on that show, Danny Strong. He also played you would know him from Buffy. He played
he was a writer. Isn't he known for being a writer nowadays mostly?
Writer. He's the showrunner for Empire. He wrote Lee Daniels the Butler.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. And he was in Mad Men. He's been in a ton of things. But yeah, he wrote Game Change. He wrote a bunch of these HBO movies. He wrote that Salinger biopic with Nicholas Hoult. That's how Nicholas Hoult ended up at my ex-husband's karaoke birthday party, where we ended up duetting some Taylor Swift together. So that's a whole other story about a whole other time. But I can't believe Fox News and NBC was all scandalized. Look, man, I'll have to check that out for myself. Dude, like, everyone, research your own facts, because I just don't know enough about that topic. But I will say that kidnapping yourself off the set of a Kubrick film, they say it's a publicity stunt. But that's sort of like, I feel like, if I'm understanding this story correctly, that misunderstands what a publicity stunt is. A publicity stunt is something you do for attention. It feels like this guy just wanted to get the fuck out of there and wanted less attention. So he ended up getting fired instead of them paying the ransom for him to show back up to work. Yeah, he would have. You know what? Like, Kubrick would not exist today. That's one of these things. So I guess we can get to this section of like, does this hold up? And there's arguments for and against why this film, I think, does it hold up. But before I guess we get there, do you have any favorite moments of this film, Alex?
There's no particular favorite moments other than the scene at the very end, the shooting scene, the death scene, essentially. Where
that's your favorite moment, you dark sick fuck.
Oh, that's funny coming from you. Okay.
I mean, my favorite scene wasn't the scene where they get shot.
No, it's not so much my favorite moment, but it was like one of the moments where I felt like I couldn't breathe. It's a very startling shot. And even if walking away from the movie, I will forget a lot of the specific details or anything like that, I will 100% remember that guttural scene where they're literally like walking across the field, being tied to the pole, waiting.
One guy's just like sobbing. Like, one guy's just like being like a little, like the whole guy. It's just like refusing to do it. And like, they're like, be a man about it. Like, his other soldiers are like feeling terrible. I do have to say, we haven't mentioned the fact that like the guy finds out that the commanding officer had shot one of his own people. And like, he was like, fine. You know what? You get to shoot these 3 men that you've decided, like, one of them is going to be the one that was tried and tried to get found guilty of cowardice. So it's your responsibility to shoot all, to look them in the eyes and shoot all 3 of your own men. And the guy's like, I really don't want to do that, man. And he's like, oh, really? Because like, you have to, because it was just a random dude you chose, right? Like, not just somebody you had a personal connection to because you felt guilty about shooting his friend and you were worried about getting called out. Like, you're gonna, like, you want to do this, you have to take responsibility for it. And it's such so watching those 3 guys go to the gallows, and it sucks because you're holding out hope, and it does this very well, like, because we've had a scene priorly where the scene right before this, we see Kirk Douglas crashing the party of like the head honcho, the head commander of France, and he's just like, I have some information
himself, and he's like,
and like, he basically gets one over on the guy, and he's like, look, I know, and I have these signed documents that we hired, like, we ordered the code red. That's that moment where he's like, we did this to ourselves. We had an order to go shoot our own troops, and like, here's a signed affidavit statement of like 30 people, including myself, saying that we were told to shoot ourselves, and like, it's this general's problem. Like, it was his fault, not ours. And so you're like, oh shit. And he's like, this might be of interest to you, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, like now we're getting somewhere. So you think that they're saved. You think that like even as they're walking to their deaths, that they might be saved by like a last minute reprieve, and that's how the movie's going to end.
Someone changes their mind or something, or like
one of those things like
like, no, please live.
the governor calls them 12th hour and like saves the life, you know. But then it turns out like in a way that again I think is very well done and very clever and very true to life, but subversive is like no, it doesn't even turn out like the guys is. Sorry, I'm saying comments. It doesn't even turn out that was ever an option on the table. Like, even though we had that scene, the option never was, we don't shoot the guys. That was never like a consideration. What does happen is they call in the general who ordered the code red or whatever, and they're like, hey, did you do that? Okay, now you have to have a trial. Yeah. They're like, you're going to have a trial, and it's going to be in front of the public, because basically they're going to throw him under the bus. Because he deserves to. Although, on the other hand, the person that told him to do it and he would get a promotion is the guy who's now determining that this guy's going to be thrown under the bus. And you kind of get the feels a little bit for the guy with the scar, where he's like, he gave the whole John, what's his name, Winter Soldier, Wyatt Russell, John Walker speech, where he's like, basically like, I've been a military man my whole life. Like, if I'm anything, like, you guys made me. I'm paraphrasing now, Winter Soldier, not this dude, but it's basically the same speech where he's like, how the fuck did you do this to me? Like, I was just following your orders. You told me to attack Anthill. You told me to do this. And then I carried it out. And then I decided to punish the people who were too cowardly to do it themselves. And like, now you're throwing me under the fucking bus. You know, and the guy's like, and then they were like, yep, we're throwing you under the bus and your trial's going to be public. Now we get the sense that he won't be killed because it's going to be a public trial and it's not going to be the same thing as this kangaroo court. But, and I don't know what happened in the real life case. I should really look these things up. But what we do get a sense of is that this one, you know, the chain of command is all sorts of crooked. Like the guy at the very top, like who's going like to the balls and who seems to be very delighted by Kirk Douglas is like, hey, great job. Like, you successfully navigated that guy out of your way. And now you get his position. Like, good. He almost like little fingers him. He's like, good job, like outmaneuvering your enemy because you wanted his position and now you can take it. And Kirk Douglas is like, screeches, what? And he's like, no, you don't understand. The guy's like, no, like, he's been amused by Kirk Douglas the whole movie. He's like, I understand. It's just cool. Like, I'm saying good job. And Kirk Douglas is like, no, you don't understand. And the guy asks him to like say I'm sorry because he's talking to him in like a kind of rude way, and he's like, maybe you want to apologize. He's like, yeah, I do want to say I'm sorry. I want to say like I'm sorry for putting my men in this position. I'm sorry for listening to you like pieces of shit. I'm sorry that like France is like a fucking this is like a stain and blight on France. Like, I'm sorry. Fuck you. You're cool. Like, bye.
Just like that. Fuck off.
And then you would think that means like he's gonna die. Like, the guy would just order him to be shot for insubordination. But the next scene we find out, or like the very end scene, what we find out is like, no, he's still got the promotion, even though he's clearly at this point like a threat to being a mutinous, like to turning the troops against France or being a deserter or something. Like, he clearly does not believe in the chain of command. He does not respect the authority of it. So just from a logistical, practical standpoint, you don't want this guy in charge of your troops anymore. He's still in charge of the troops, but then he hears at the very end, after he sees his soldiers being sort of rallied and having this moment of humanity around this German woman, they're going back to the front lines. Like, he's got to get his soldiers, take whoever's left, be back in terms of cannon and fodder.
He's like, all over again. Oh.
Yeah, like, it's just like it's a really dark kind of bleak ending after that really uplifting note of, oh, they're not going to rape that chick. They're just going to sing along with her.
Well, like I mentioned, it ends on that note, and Kirk Douglas and Stanley Kubrick were adamant to keep that very bleak, dark ending. Where the studios at the time, they really wanted something much more uplifting, something a little more patriotic, just something.
Do you think it would have been nice? Do you think it would have been nice if they just ended it after, like, because it's only like 1 or 2 lines that he finds out after the cafe scene that he's going to be going back to the front lines. You think that they had ended it on that, the German woman singing and the French soldiers crying and the realization that, do you think that would have pleased the studio?
Maybe. I don't think that would have been happy enough in their eyes.
I don't think it's about being happy. I think it's about showing the corruption of the French military, and I think, or the military process, and that's what they wouldn't have wanted to happen.
Yeah, you know, you're totally right in terms of that. But I mean, at the end of the day, in terms of a studio just wanting to make audiences feel good leaving the theater.
It's a fucking war movie.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely agree. I
What's
know.
to feel good about?
Hey, a lot of people feel good at the end of war movies. Hacksaw Ridge, for example, Black Hawk Down, The Patriot. You feel fine walking away from those movies, even though they're dark, very horrible movies.
I have never walked away.
At the very end, you're like, oh, they do in their own way. Get a happy ending.
No, and that might be true for some people. I've never walked away from a war film being like, oh, cool, like they did that. Maybe, you know what, maybe Inglourious Basterds. But again, that's less about it's more about the espionage side of the war, although there are soldiers in that. It's more about the espionage, like, part of the war, and more about, like, the Jews and the whole thing there. But I would say that's, like, maybe the one war film where I was like, yeah, kick ass. Like Dunkirk, even, like, movies, I guess, about, like, the sort of that take place during wartime but are sort of disconnected, like The Finest Hour or The Darkest Hours. The Finest Hour or The Darkest Hour?
Dark Hours?
The Finest Hour is the one with Gary Oldman. I'm talking about the Gary Oldman as Churchill one. And Ben, Ben, my favorite guy in the world. What's his last name? Ben. Oh my God, man, I was thinking
Mendelsohn.
My God, Ben Mendelsohn, my love of my life, as I think the prince or the king or whatever. So he's in there. Star Wars. Shut up, William. Shut up, William. You really you like the part?
The Darkest Hour, yeah.
So I just want to talk about how William really liked that part where she said her name is Rey Skywalker, and then cut scene, because from now on, William's just going to be the person who really liked the end of this Last Jedi, or The Rise of Skywalker. Good job, William. You really fucking stuck the landing with that one. You're in a league all of your own with Rey Skywalker. The Finest Hour is the one with Chris Pine. You know what?
I got one. Ooh, Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I think mapping superhero stuff onto a war film is a little bit of a different situation, because a lot of things, like, you could say a lot of superhero movies are about wars because they're technically Avengers, because it's about space war or whatever. But I'm talking about, like, movies that are, like, literally about maybe we can put it this way: movies that are about real life battles, that are inspired by real life battles. Braveheart,
The Patriot.
Yeah, I didn't feel good. Like, I don't think the cost of life equals out to me where I'm like, oh, now they're happy.
No, you're totally right. I absolutely agree with you. But at the end of the day, he is smiling. He walks home to a new wife that's pregnant, and he is
good for him.
And his family is all smiling, and they're like,
minus Heath Ledger. Minus Heath Ledger.
And that's why. And they all smile as they walk home together on their home.
Look, the end of War and Peace is Natasha getting fat and old, and them all living happily ever after. Although the fact that, like, they have to mention that she's fat now is, like, a weird beat. But, like, the idea is that they lived past the war and they were able to cobble together some semblance of a life. But we're not talking then about, like, the PTSD or the cost of whatever. Like, I don't think war in any scenario makes it look like it's worth it. Dunkirk is a great example. Like, Dunkirk ends on an uplifting note, but, like, it's still a note that very much implies all these people died for no reason, no reason. And, like, it was just the whole thing is a casualty. Every act of war is a blunder, a blight that is on par with, like, trying to retrieve the anthill. It is like using people as pawns to do things, and it's terrible. I mean, there are films that take place during the war that are more lighthearted in tone, like Three Kings, with George Clooney and Spike Jonze and whoever's the third guy. I can't remember right now. It's whoever punched David O. Russell in the face. No, that was Clooney. Anyway, there's the Three Kings. There's a bunch of movies that Lawrence of was Mark Wahlberg in Three Kings? And there's Lawrence of Arabia. There's movies that take place during wartime, but I'm talking about movies that are about war, that are about, like, the generals, the soldiers, and whatever. Dylan saying. Oh, Dylan, we could do Blaze
Mark Wahlberg and Ice Cube.
Yes. Yo, I thought it was Ice Cube, so high five for me and high five for you, but also high five for me for remembering Spike Jonze is in that movie. Good job, Drew. He is. He's Spike, like the other guy.
The director?
David O. Russell's the director.
Yeah.
He got punched in the face.
Spike Jonze, the director.
Yeah, the director. Yeah. Spike Jonze, the director, being John Malkovich, was in this movie.
Yeah, I knew David O. Russell directed it,
but Miracle of St. Anne's a bit depressing. Yeah, look, man, any of the Spike Lee movies about war are like pretty spot on. Like if you saw the Five Bloods, you walked away with that movie feeling like good about what war was. Like, nah, man. Like Delroy Lindo was totally fucked. Like the idea of PTSD. Like even American Sniper, and Hurt Locker, which I know you're showing up as examples of movies that make war look cool. Like the Hurt Locker, if anything.
I don't know about Hurt Locker. I have not seen Hurt Locker.
Because Hurt Locker is basically all about how he can't readjust to civilian life because he's so used to the high octane thing of almost blowing up the IEDs.
One of the movies I mentioned. Like movie.
Oh yeah, you mentioned it last week, so I was just circling back around to it, or he brought about the other week. But like the idea that like he's gotten so used to being thought that he's going to blow up any second with these. I'm saying IUDs, but that's I think something else. But like these bombs that when he goes home and he's done with his tour and he's with his infant child and his wife, he can't like feel anything, and he goes to the supermarket and he can't like feel anything. It's just this sort of like ringing in his ears and this blankness. So he signs up for another tour just to like feel something, even if it's just the fear of like death, because once you get addicted to that cycle, I guess, or once you know, it's really hard to like live a normal life, you know?
Yeah. It's very hard. It's very hard to not only be family of someone in that situation, but obviously just it's on both sides. It's just a very experience.
Yeah.
And as someone that's as the child of someone in that situation or the partner of someone in that situation, you do the best that you can, but there's only so much you can do.
Right.
Because you can offer the support, you can do whatever you can in order to make sure you're not triggering them or anything you can. But at the end of the day, it's not your responsibility to fix them.
Yeah. I mean, but like, you know, it's hard because they're also somebody, but you also know that like, you know, they don't get that many resources, like the VA is not, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but like, we don't give that many resources to soldiers.
Assistance.
We don't take care of them. So like they just gave their lives and their mental states and their physical capacities over to this country, whether or not you agree with it. Like who is supposed to take care of them? You know, whose responsibility are they? Because it should be the country's. Anyway, this is getting a little off topic, but I do want to say my favorite scene in this was absolutely the end scene where you think something terrible is about to happen to this woman. They're hooting and hollering. They're talking about like her body and how she can do stuff with her throat. And you're like, oh yeah, they're like they're taking out all their like male aggression on her. And you're like, she's gonna get raped because she's a German. She's like a German person. And then she starts singing, and like immediately there's this shift, and it feels very Casablanca-esque, where they just start crying. And even though it's a German song, they all recognize the heartfelt moment of it and recognize the humanity of it. And even though this movie isn't about recognizing, this movie is almost about the opposite. This movie isn't about recognizing your enemy as being human. It's about recognizing your your own soldiers as being the enemy. So it's like a beautiful kind of twisting of the screw to end on a note that's like, even if you weren't able to see your own soldiers as anything other than like the enemy or pawns that were in your way, look at how the soldiers, the people actually fighting the battles, are able to like be humanized by the people that they are getting gunned down by every day by just listening to this one song. And it kind of, again, shows you that the soldiers are better than the commanding officers. And that there's one good guy, and his name is Kirk Cameron. Nope, this is not a good guy. Kirk Douglas. Looks so much like his son. He looks a lot like Michael Douglas in this movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a very strong resemblance for sure between the sons, between them both. Now, overall, I did ask you this before.
Sorry. Yeah.
I did ask you this earlier in the episode, but I don't remember it being mentioned, being answered though. After watching this movie, do you feel a need to watch any of Kubrick's other war movies in particular, like you said with Fear and Desire or Dr. Strangelove,
or The Killing, right?
Or The Killing, or alternatively, is there any other, or even Spartacus?
Wait, sorry, The Killing is not about that. Sorry,
yeah, she was Kubrick's wife. before they divorced and then got reunited and came back together. But or do you feel a desire to go watch any of Kirk Douglas's movies after
Look,
watching?
I think it's weird, right? Because I could be like, I don't like this because it's a war film, or like I like this movie, but like that's in spite of it being a war film and a Kubrick film. Or I could say, but like I didn't love like Catherine Bigelow war movies either. Like I don't like any war movies. Do I feel the need to go watch more Kubrick movies? I mean, fundamentally, it's like a part of me wants to resist it by being like, I don't want to support and like what I consider abusive, toxic art behavior. Like the way that, as much as I loved his movies, a lot of them, like I don't want to watch Woody Allen films anymore. Like it's just
100%.
Like if it used to be a gray area, it used to be, let's separate the art from the artist, but like now it's after that, especially after that documentary, it's become so clear how he was grooming us to become normalized the idea of young women and these older men because he wanted to normalize that behavior. And so it's become impossible. I've had to put aside movies that I truly love, like Annie Hall, and just be like, or Purple Rose of Cairo, one of my favorite movies of all time, or Blue Jasmine, these great pieces of art, because unfortunately the artist who was behind it, it truly was the auteur, he wrote and directed, and this was all his vision, is a monster. And it just sucks. It does suck because a lot of films we're finding out in Hollywood, like the whole system has kind of always been full of monsters. And so how many of these movies that we loved are we going to have to like throw by the wayside because they were made by horrible men? I don't know where the line is, but like I'll just say that it did make me want to watch Doctor Strangelove again, give it a shot. I don't have any desire to see Fear and Desire. I don't know. I mean, the idea of like what it took to make this war film, he might as well just be putting them in war. Like I'm sure these people walked out with severe PTSD having done this. Like not even soldiers in the battles would have to go do the same thing 57 times and get blown up 57 times. That's horrifying. So maybe not Kubrick, but it did make me want to watch more movies that are outside of my wheelhouse of interest, which are movies that are like about maybe the ethics of war, or like, you know, the fundamentals of war. Like these, like you said, the courtroom drama war stuff might be more interesting to me now. Did you order the code red? I have always loved A Few Good Men, but I've always associated that with Sorkin dialogue. Like it's a good Sorkin movie. Again, a very problematic auteur, but like, you know, Trial of Chicago 7, written and directed by, that was one was written and directed by Sorkin. That was his directorial debut. Great movie. He's a problematic person.
No, I thought he also directed. He directed one or two other movies. He directed Molly's Game.
You sure about that? I thought this was like his direct making.
With Jessica Chastain.
I know who that is. Aaron Sorkin. You're saying? Molly's Game. Let's see. I know he adapted it because that was written by one of the people. Let's see. It was it says by directorial debut. You're right. That's my bad. Good job. I don't know why they made it. Oh, because this was his first nomination for Best Director. That's what it was. Sorry about that. You're right, and good job.
I never get the points with that Drew gets. No.
I mean, dude, all the points for that, I would put money on it being like Trials of Chicago 7 because they made such a big deal about it. That's so weird. I remember him. Wow, that's so weird. Good job. Anyway.
We are going to be breaking up here in a few minutes. So if you guys have any questions or comments about this movie, or if you guys want to let us know, make any recommendations when it comes to any war movies, Stanley Kubrick movies, or just let us know your favorite war movies as well. Why do you love these war movies? We would just love to know your opinion as well. I personally, while we get any of the comments over in the chat, though, I would say I kind of realize I've only seen like one or two Kirk Douglas movie, including this. So I definitely need to find a way to check that out because obviously he's made like over 70 movies over his entire filmography, over his entire career. So I definitely need to check that out.
I've never seen I'm looking at these down. I've never seen like. Oh, I saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo. Oh no, he's in the Broadway version of that. Whoops.
That'd be
wait. What is this? He gave it to his son, Michael Douglas, who turned into an Oscar-winning film. What did Michael Douglas have to do with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Just 1 second while I sidebar here.
Or something.
Oh, okay, that's interesting because like it looked like it was supposed to be like his thing. Yeah, he produced it. That's really interesting because it seems like he was trying to give it to his son to star in, but then that didn't happen. There's a lot of actors that I need to get to before I think I get to Kirk Douglas. Like I really needed to get to like Paul Newman's filmography. I really like Paul Newman, and I haven't seen a lot of his movies. I just watched Cool Hand Luke for the first time. There's like that other guy, like Robert Redford.
Oh my gosh,
was so fucking hot. Paul Newman was so fucking hot. Like, just not even.
He is so gorgeous.
Oh, God,
and
Paul.
No,
there's one line. Here, go ahead.
Spartacus, babe. I have not seen Spartacus, babe.
I've never seen Spartacus either, but that like, there's this one line in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof where Elizabeth Taylor comes up behind Paul Newman, who's like drinking heavily, and it's like sweaty New Orleans, and she goes, "You smell good," and like you can smell it from the screen. Like I swear to God, like she comes up behind him, she's like, "You smell good," and you're like, "Yeah, I bet he does. I bet Paul Newman's sweating like out his alcoholic toxins. Like smells delicious, like fucking cookies or anything."
I have to say, personally, based on personal experience, I never really thought about it. I always like thought. I just thought it was just me. Like every time I go out drinking or something, the day after when I'm kind of hungover, I feel like I reek. And I'm like, well, I know I showered last night or whatever the situation is. I know for a fact, but I feel like I reek horribly.
Oh, yeah.
And my husband Lucas mentioned, yes, like alcohol's like coming out through your pores. It's like you're not just peeing it out.
That's why people can always tell
about it. No, I was like, that makes
sense. Term like
he's like, yeah, everyone
sweat and stuff.
Yeah, everyone.
Well, I don't smell.
Right after.
I actually don't smell.
The day after when you're hungover.
Oh well, I'm not a huge drinker, but I have to say that I know the feeling you're talking about. But I have like a bunch of physical, and this can be backed up by somebody in the chat, I'm sure. But like, I have a bunch of weird physical, autoimmune things that some of which are like really bad and have bad effects, but some of which have like unintendedly good side effects. One of which is I don't grow hair underneath my arms, like none, like no hair, just totally hairless, basically. And so like I don't really smell that bad under my arms. And then another one is I don't really smell in general. Like I can go for a really long time without bathing or brushing my teeth, and like I won't smell. Not that I do, but I could. Is what I'm saying.
I'm really, really jealous.
Lolita. I would totally watch Lolita, by the way.
I actually watched. I did a episode of like best classic book to movie adaptations, and I watched Lolita. I actually really thought Lolita was a pretty great adaptation for a lot of different ways. And
I mean, like I don't have to agree with it. I just think I'm gonna like it.
Well, the thing is, and it's not an environmental story or anything. It's very on point with the idea that this guy is ridiculous. This guy is a buffoon.
This guy's awful and he's creepy. But like but the way he's writing about love is so romantic that you're supposed to be.
But
you're complicit.
Versus like in the Jeremy Irons version, where they kind of make it seem romantic and. Yeah, they do make it seem hot, kind of.
Well, I mean, but that's also kind of the part of it. Like in the book, it's both things, right? You're supposed to both feel pity for this guy, and also think he's pathetic, but also think he's a creep and he's doing these horrible things and he's a predator. But also find like how he waxes on about love to be, in a way, very beautiful, like and to be like an ideal.
Well, yeah, in this movie, he's. I think it's actually. I thought it was like really interesting, just because it not only is just he like ridiculous, but I loved how it is the embodiment of the what is that term that was invented because of Elizabethtown, the
the Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Yeah. Where she's essentially Manic Pixie Dream Girl, where she has no motivations, no ambitions. She has no world outside of him.
She's a Manic Pixie Dream child. I mean,
absolutely. Manic Pixie Dream child, absolutely. But in this movie in particular, you never get her side of the story. You never see what she wants to do. That's the point. Exactly. Yeah, that's the point of the movie. And I was like,
oh, you know what? I'm interested in that. I would almost say that should be our thing for next week, because I've never seen it, but I know next week is my pick, and I'm trying to figure out what to give you. I think I know what I want to give you. I want to give you a timey-wimey one. because I've really been on my timey-wimey kicks lately. So I'm thinking about something. You've probably seen like Donnie Darko, right? That's been one of those.
It's been a long time, but I have seen that.
You've seen Donnie Darko. I'm wondering if there's something else I can give you that. And Eric, speak up from the chat. What are some of my favorite timey-wimey ones? Have you seen Palm Springs yet? I bet you have.
No, I have not.
Oh shit. Okay, you know what? Like, let's do something lighthearted after this week. It's on Hulu, I believe, right? That was where it came out.
I know. I haven't checked it out. I know.
I think it's got some really interesting concepts in there. It's almost something I'd want to do a double feature on, like like Palm Springs, and then like maybe something like Time Crimes or not Groundhog Day. I would almost say Time Crimes, which is it's an Mexican film that was created by the same guy who did that movie Colossal with Anne Hathaway. And it's Spanish language, so there's subtitles, but it's a really good, really short, very effective film about murder and time looping. And so I want to do like a double feature, if that's possible. They're both kind of short, kind of fun.
I just want to make sure, because I know Palm Springs is available on Hulu. I just want to double check to make sure that Time Crimes is available.
If not, I will buy it for you, because I definitely know it's available because I've purchased it online.
Double check. I just want to, I just want to double check that it's available.
It's available to watch for free on Pluto TV. Mm-hmm. So that's a free service.
Ryan, I already know everything about it. So that's why. I'm like,
wait, Time Crimes? You know everything about Time Crimes?
No, Palm Springs. That's why. It's just like cool, whatever. Yeah,
I think you'll still really like it, and I think it'll be a good thing because this is a genre I care a lot about. It's a very interesting genre to me. It's the idea of like it's a Groundhog's Day but done in a certain kind of way that is it's very important to me.
I really don't like Groundhog's Day.
Well, this is not. They're not Groundhog's Day. These play up the ideas of time loops, but they're not done the Groundhog's Day.
Perfect. We have Time Crimes on Amazon.
Perfect.
Thank you, babe.
Yeah, I think
my babe's he's the best. Lucas is
love
wonderful.
it. Mm-hmm. I think you're really gonna like Time Crimes. It's not like Groundhog's Day. That is it's almost like a horror film. It's a horror film that involves timey-wimey elements. Palm Springs is a really great comedy that clearly looked at Groundhog's Day and was like, how can we like do it better, like in more modern and to deal with issues that be more addressable and relatable. And it's very, very funny. So. Awesome. I think you guys probably, you know what? I'm guessing you guys bought it last May because I brought it up last May and I was like, you guys are going to have to watch this at some point. So guys,
here, we're going to be doing a double feature next Tuesday. So definitely check those movies out. The double feature of Time Crimes and Palm Springs. I was just Palm Screams.
It's okay. That's okay. Look, and thank you for letting me do a awesome double feature. I love timey-wimey stuff. It's my favorite. I should be more into Doctor Who for how much I love timey-wimey stuff. But
I'm surprised that you don't.
Wait. So Ryan, are you talking about something? Yeah, boss level combating good films, and she knows the plot. But let's see if we can change Alex's mind. This will be the bias that we go in with. Will you like a movie despite knowing its plot ahead of time? I know you're really biased against the idea that you might not because you already know everything that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's not only that. It's just that I'm a little biased towards some actors involving the movie.
You don't like Andy Samberg?
In Palm Springs.
You don't like Andy Samberg? Okay, I'm interested. I want to hear more about this.
We'll find out. We'll go into it. I like him.
Do you have a big anti-Christine Milioti
I don't
issue?
know her. I don't know her. I don't associate her with anything else other than
How I Met Your Mother.
That's literally the only thing I've seen her in.
USS Callister. I had a really hard time saying her name recently. I'm only saying her name out loud now because I've had so many issues with saying her name in the past and pronouncing it correctly that I give myself daps. Okay. Anyway, guys, so Alex, where can people find you?
You can find me up there on Twitter at @real_AlexMac. You can also find me being part of the Call to Action podcast over there, where we're doing a whole bunch of stuff for Schmoedown after shows. I'm doing some movie challenges, a whole bunch of good stuff.
Which movie challenge?
Movie challenges, where it's C2A movie challenges, where we challenge other people to watch a certain movie in a certain period of time. And essentially, for every one challenge you complete, you get to issue 2 challenges to someone else.
Dude, I saw one of your tweets the other day that was like a really spot on tweet. That was like a really good question. You had a very good open ended question. It was like, what's your favorite? Was it like, what's your favorite scene of something, or what's your favorite example of something in a movie? And like, I sent you like a bunch of links. Oh, I'll have to find it.
I can't remember.
It was really good. Anyway, check out Alex on Twitter too, because she is on point these days.
Love you, boo. You're amazing.
Yeah. You can check me out. I'm VideoDrew. You're on my channel. Please like and subscribe and rate and comment and give 5 stars or whatever. And Mondays and Thursdays, we do the VideoChronic Pop Culture Quiz right here at 8 p.m. same time. We just did a Patreon fan request for Mortal Kombat 2021. It was pretty dope. Our boy Ryan won it. Won a little bit of chunk of change from that. And that was a Patreon request from AJ Lancaster. We had Jesse the Jackal Swift on with Mike Deacon. It was a whole party. And I think we have something on Thursday. Eric, if we want to confirm that, it's another requested one that's going to be pretty awesome. You can follow me at VideoDrew on all social media. It's one word. All caps, one word, but the all caps doesn't matter as much when you're Googling it. You can also check me out on Patreon, like I mentioned. You can sign up for things like our Wednesdays and Saturday study sessions, because I also participate in the movie trivia Schmoedown. And final thing, Saturday, 11:45, I think, or 11:35 a.m., I will be participating in the Skybound horror exhibition movie trivia contest. It's going to be me. I'm going to smoke the competition here, guys. Listen to this.
It's me, guys.
It's going to be me, Adam Collins, Bibiani. No sweat. The person on the desk is Robert Kirkman. You might know him from such things as The Walking Dead and comics and Knowing Christian, I guess. Just kidding. I know who Robert Kirkman is. He did Invincible, a show I haven't seen yet. So I think that's going to be awesome. You guys should all tune into that. It's going to be a huge event because it's like Skybound's event, not like it's like the Schmoedown thing, but it's Skybound. It's going to be really funny. I have a pretty good feeling about this, and you should all check it out. Okay, I think that's it for the evening. So unless you have anything else to say about war.
Au revoir.
Nope. Au revoir. War. Sayonara. War. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye. Let's see. Oh no, I almost pressed the wrong thing. Boop.